So hello everyone and welcome. My name is Somananda, as you know, Soma for short. Many of you have participated in various courses and workshops that we have done in the years past, and you are familiar with our Facebook Live events. These are events where we make sure that we do our best to share some knowledge, give some teachings, answer questions, make different presentations, and in this way keep the community more into the spiritual vibe and give everyone the opportunity to really get not just in contact with us regularly, but also to have exposure to very good teachings and sharing knowledge. So as you know, this is something we do regularly, and today I'm here with you to talk about a topic which is super wonderful, really fascinating. And this topic is a text which is one of the most fundamental texts ever written, a really beautiful, very special text. And this text is a text that it's a text that is very, very famous, as many of you know. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful text for so many reasons. It is considered a very holy scripture. It is considered a text that presents incredible knowledge. It's actually, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, but the opinion of many, many scholars and many, many yogis and spiritual masters, is considered to be a text which is simply a scripture of divinity. It is a purely divine knowledge, revelation, which has been shared with mankind. And that's why it's no hesitation on my side to say that this is definitely one of the top teachings or top texts, spiritual texts, that I for myself have ever read. And if I would have to choose, I don't know, 3 texts top of the top, it definitely would be one of them. So definitely incredible teachings are shared here. That's why I had this feeling, knowing how much I love, this teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, to really, talk about it a little bit with everyone, simply read from it, and then do some commentaries. And of course, my commentaries are my own. I'm not claiming that my commentaries are the absolute truth or something like that. These are my own interpretations and understandings of the Bhagavad Gita from my experience as a yogi, as a tantric practitioner, as a spiritual person for the last 20-something years. And as a result of that, I am very happy to share and to actually be part of this long list of spiritual teachers. Again, I'm not saying I'm at that caliber, but still, I'm happy to be part of that kind of comradehood of spiritual teachers who aimed to give commentaries for the Bhagavad Gita. From Shivananda to Yogananda to many other spiritual masters who spoke and commented on the Bhagavad Gita, I humbly offer a little bit of my commentaries in modern times to give people the opportunity to get to know the Bhagavad Gita a little bit more. So that's the introduction, and now I'd like to jump into it. One more thing to mention before I begin, and that is that the Bhagavad Gita is a text that is not that small. And having said that, don't expect that we go through the whole Bhagavad Gita in one sitting today. So obviously this will take a few presentations. I'm not sure how many, we'll see as we progress. But this is, let's call it part 1 of the study and learning the teachings that come from the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to start reading for you. I'm using a text because there are many different commentaries and translations of the Bhagavad Gita. I'm using a translation which comes from the Sri Ramakrishna Math in Chennai, which I find it's actually a very tiny text this size, but it actually, in my opinion, a very good translation, clean, without too many issues. I've seen some translations of the Bhagavad Gita that I was not happy to recommend to people. It's not that they're terrible, it's just that they're not super accurate, and I don't recommend them so much. While I've seen other translations which are very good, but the English, at least when translated to English, it was a little bit too sophisticated, complicated, old-style English, and that also can be a bit challenging. So that's why today I'm using a text which is simple English and yet very clear, very good teaching. So enough with the preliminaries, and it's time to begin. So we're going to start with this text. The Bhagavad Gita, which, as many of you know, is a part of a bigger epoch called the Mahabharata, is a time where the great Arjuna, a great warrior who is the leader of his clan, his brothers, the 5 Pandavas, he's leading them into a battle, and here this battle is about to begin, and this is where the Bhagavad Gita text starts. I will make more commentaries as we continue, so don't worry. Let's begin. Chapter 1. This is Arjuna's conversation. Dhritarashtra said, Dhritarashtra, just to let you know, was the king and the father of the 100 brothers that the Pandavas were fighting in a big war with big armies. So just so you know, he says, "O Sanjaya," he's talking to his friend there, "what did my people and the followers of the Pandavas," my people, he means his sons and his people, and the side of the army, and the followers of the Pandavas, which means the 5 brothers and all their armies. So what do they do after having assembled in the holy land of Kurukshetra? Kurukshetra is the place, it's a big plain where the battle took place. Eager to join battle, he says. Sanjaya said, "Then seeing the army of the Pandavas arrayed in battle order, King Duryodhana, for his part, approached the teacher Drona and spoke to him the following words." So these are different individuals who are part of this. Let's not get too entangled with name right now. When there's a name of an individual which is very important for this text, I will go into more details explaining about them. But for now, let's continue, because this is really just the introduction, the beginning, and we haven't yet gotten into the teachings themselves. I'd like to kind of go rather quickly, not too deep, going too deep into the chapter 1, because here the teachings are minimal, and we will get into the real thick of it, the real deep teachings from chapter 2. So let's see if we can make it there. But let's continue. "O teacher, behold this great army of the sons of Pandu." Sons of Pandu are the Pandavas, as I've mentioned. "Arrayed in battle order by your talented disciple, the son of Drupada. Here in that army are many brave bowmen," so he describes the various warriors here of note, "who are equal to Bhima and Arjuna in battle." So Arjuna is one of the most famous warrior of those days, considered to be really a top, incredibly powerful, skilled warrior. And Bhima is his brother, actually, one of the 5 Pandavas, who is considered to have been super strong and very powerful. Great car warriors like Yududana, Virata, and Drupada. Car warriors, which means those who are fighting from chariots. And continues. Drishita to Chikitana and the brave king of Kashi, Purujit, Kuntibahoja, and Shibya, and the best of men. So he describes many names of great warriors, just trying this way to really describe what goes on and how super strong individuals are part of this battle. So don't worry about all these names. He basically describes here that he sees that on the plains of Kurukshetra, the armies are assembled, and he's asking, "What do you see?" Because actually the king is blind, and he's asking, "What do you see? What is happening there? Please describe it to me." And this man is describing the names of the people that he sees about to engage in battle. And he keeps going with different names. He says the powerful Yudhamanyu, the brave Uttamayu, the son of Sabhadra, and the sons of, and he continues with names, so I'm just going to skip here and move on. O best of Brahmanas, I shall mention for your information the names of the distinguished leaders of our army. Yourself, Bhishma, and Karna, these are all great warriors that he sees in the army there. The victorious Kripa, and the names continue in a long list here, so I'm just going to move on. And he says, these and many more brave men who are ready to lay down their lives for my sake and who fight with various types of weapons are present here. All of them are seasoned warriors, which means all of these people are very seasoned. That means experienced, powerful warriors. Though numerically superior, inadequate is the army of our defended by Bhishma, while theirs guarded by Bhima is adequate. So he already here admits that although their army, that means the army, we have two armies here, the army of the Pandavas with Arjuna the leader, and the army of the enemy, let's just simply call them the enemy, and those are the sons of Dhrishtra, which I've mentioned. And he says that the army of the Pandavas is actually smaller, and the army that fights them, the enemy, is very big. However, he says, the army of the Pandavas is more skilled, just to clarify here. Therefore, do you all protect Bhishma, remaining in appropriate positions in your respective divisions. So he just continues describing how the battlefield unfolds there. Cheering him up, the valiant grandfather Bhishma. Here it's an important name. Bhishma is considered the grandfather. He is the immortal one. He is like one of the greatest, oldest of them all, who is really considered and very revered by all of the warriors on both sides, the enemy and the Pandavas. So Bhishma, the oldest of the Kurus, sounded a lion roar loudly and blew his conch shell horn. So here, what happens, as used to happen in those days in fights, in big wars, that as the war is about to begin, the great warriors, the leader, the generals of each army will take a big conch, like some kind of a conch, and blow the conch, making a very strong sound. And this way, each side will blow their conches very strong in order to kind of impress, to create strength, to create this kind of intensity before the war starts. So now the conches start being blown, and usually there's an order to how the conches are being blown. And here we have Bhishma, who is this grandfather of them all, who has the privilege to blow his conch, the first of them all. This might seem like silly little details to many of you, but it's interesting to understand that, because chapter 1 gives us a little bit of a background. It's almost like a Shakespearean story when you have a bit of a background to what's going on. There is a war, there's this army and that army, and there's different characters that are there. But you will see that as we progress from chapter 2 already, it's kind of the story will focus and zoom in only on two individuals, and that will be Krishna himself and Arjuna. Krishna, the great enlightened being, I'll discuss him as we get to him soon, and Arjuna, who is his disciple and the leader of the army of the good guys, so to speak. And then they have a big discussion, which is unfolding throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So actually all these names, it's a bit confusing for some of you, but just, be patient. Just get it as a background, as a little bit of a, preparation for the whole background story. And then as we progress to the teachings themselves, you'll see that we focus on two individuals only. But for now, let's keep on with this beautiful explanation as it starts in chapter 1, explaining what's going on here. So he says, thereupon, after the first blow of the first conch, he says, thereupon there were various drums and trumpets and cow horns and all kinds of noise, and basically there was a big blowout going on here. And as this continues, he says, then Sri Krishna and Arjuna, seated in a great chariot with white horses, yoked to it, blew their celestial conch shell horns. And now our main characters are blowing their horns as well. And here we have Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna is the leader of the army. Krishna, although he is the guru of Arjuna, and at the same time Krishna is considered an enlightened being of the highest degree, he is an avatar, in fact, and I'll discuss that shortly. Still, Krishna chose to humbly just be the driver of the chariot of Arjuna, while Arjuna is the warrior. It's a kind of choice that Krishna has made for various reasons. He actually was considering not to fight at all in this war. He was kind of just a driver. This belongs to different reasons why earlier in the story, in the Mahabharata, these things unfolded there. I won't go into it right now. Focusing on the text Bhagavad Gita, I continue. Sri Krishna blew his conch and Arjuna blew his. They give names for the conches here, but I'll just move on. It's not so relevant. And then more great warriors he mentions here are blowing their conches, and he gives various names of different warriors that are just, because for those days, when you blow your conch as a general, it's considered like an act of honor. It's something very important. And in the text, it's important for them as a background for the text to describe who is blowing the horn when, which great kings or great warriors are participating, and so on. For us, at this point, as a spiritual text, it's less relevant, so I'm not insisting too much. And I'm going to skip through some of the less relevant parts in just chapter 1. Don't worry, I won't skip much in the future as you keep studying, but just for your background to understand. So that tumulus, uproar, resounding in the sky and over the land, pierced the hearts of the followers of Dhritarashtra. These are the enemy, the bad guys, so to speak. O king, Arjuna, the Pandava leader, as I said, he's leading the Pandavas, with the banner crest of a monkey. A monkey has a relevant thing in many of the teachings in ancient India. On seeing the followers of Dhritarashtra arrayed for battle and the clash of weapons about to start, so the war didn't start yet, but they're all, waving their weapons and making a lot of noise, he said, held up his bow, and said the following words to Sri Krishna. Now we progress. Now, once all the noise is there, everybody's eager to start the battle. Now he says to his driver and Guru Krishna, Arjuna says the following. He says, please station my chariot between the two armies so that I may have a view of the eve of this, on the eve of this battle, of all those standing ready to fight, and learn who all are the persons with whom I have to contend. So he wants to observe the enemy, and he wants the chariot to be driven closer in between the armies so he can observe what's going on, prepare, as a good general should. And he says, let me see all those who have arrived to favor the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, the enemy. He wants to see who are all these people in war and are standing ready to join battle. Sanjaya said, O King Dhritarashtra, Sri Krishna, to whom Arjuna addressed these words, stationed that most splendid of chariots. So Krishna was driving the chariot and stationed it, he says, at the place between the two armies. Confronting Bhishma, Drona, and all those chiefs, he said, O Arjuna, see these men of the Kuru horde assembled for battle. So he says, look at the enemy, the Kurus they are called. He says, look at the enemy. These are the people that are assembled to battle against you and your brothers, basically. Moving on. There he saw, so now he describes, what did Arjuna see when he looked at the enemy? Who did he see there? He describes, there he saw standing in both the armies, fathers, grandfathers, uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, comrades, father-in-law, and bosom friends. Seeing all these kinsmen arrayed, Arjuna was overcome with great pity and said, sorrowing to Krishna, he said, seeing these relatives standing eager to join battle, my limbs are giving way, my mouth is parching, I get trembling of the body, and he basically feels very negative. Now, you would ask, how come in the army there's all these people that he knows, friends, family, whatever? And the answer is that on the side of the Kurus, on the side of the enemy, the bad guys, there have been quite a few great souls, quite a few great warriors, quite a few people who are actually good people, but they had various commitments and they had certain needs for whichever reason. In the backstage, basically in the story of the Mahabharata, it is explained more clearly that they had made commitments to be part of the war, but on the side of the enemy. And being men of their words, they stood with the enemy against Krishna and against Arjuna, even though some of them definitely knew that it was not the side of the good people, the good side, so to speak, but they made their choices and they stayed there. But Arjuna, as he views the enemy and he sees many of these people that he actually has a lot of respect for, like even Bhishma, who is the grandfather, the immortal one, even he had a commitment to the king and had to be on the side of the enemy against Arjuna. So Arjuna, seeing all these amazing people, he says to Krishna, I am baffled. I am feeling depressed, basically. Look at these amazing people that I should respect, and yet we are here and I'm supposed to fight them. And when we say fight, just so we're clear, he's supposed to kill them all, to slaughter them. This is a war which is real. This is not some, POW, take prisoners type of war. This is kill or be killed, very tough situation. So he's not feeling happy about the choices in front of him. It's clear at this point. And he keeps on talking to Krishna here, and he says, my bow, Gandiva, because they name the weapons. The weapons have specific names. It's a very common thing in societies which are based on war and the arts of war and so on. And he says, my bow is slipping from my hand. My skin feels burning. I find it impossible to stand firm, and my mind, as it were, is reeling. In other words, his mind is really disturbed. O Ksheva, they call each other by different names here, but it's always Krishna here or Arjuna. So he says, I see adverse omens, like he sees bad omens, he says. I do not feel that any good will come by killing all one's kinsmen in battle. He says, I don't feel it's good if I kill my kinsmen, my friends, or my family members in battle. He says, O Krishna, I do not long for victory or kingdom or enjoyments. Oh, Govinda, Govinda is one of the names of Krishna, of course. Of what use is kingdom, enjoyments, and even life itself, he says. Those for whose sake kingdoms, enjoyments, and pleasures are desired, those very teachers, fathers, and sons, as also grandfathers, uncles, fathers-in-law, and other relatives are here stationed in battle, ready to give their lives and possessions. He says, I don't want all this victory and kingdoms and whatever, enjoyments, but those people, all those friends, family, and so on, this is what they want, and they're fighting me, he says. Even for the sovereignty of the three worlds are the physical, the subtle, and the highest world, he says, I do not desire to kill them. Though myself killed, he said, because he will be killed if he won't fight, how much less then for this earthly kingdom, he says. Therefore, he says, I don't even have the need to benefit in the earthly level, to kind of have all kinds of benefits from victory. What joy can there be for us by killing those sons of Dhritarashtra, he says. Though they are murderous villains, because they have done various negative things in the text earlier in the Mahabharata, as I said, only sin will occur to us by killing them. That's his opinion here. And he continues, therefore, O Mahadeva, he says, it is not befitting that we kill our relations, our relatives, in other words, or the sons of Dhritarashtra, he says. How could one be happy by the slaughter of one's own kinsmen? He says, O Krishna, even if these people with their intelligence overpowered by greed, because some of them, intelligent as they are, they got overpowered by greed, and that's why they chose the wrong side, do not see any evil in the decay of families and any sin in the persecution of friends. That means even if they lost their wits when it comes to these choices, like they don't see evil and decay of families, like they don't understand they're making the wrong choice and they fight on the wrong side. He said, even if that's the case, why should not we, who are aware of the evil of such decay of families, learn to desist from that sin? He says, why shouldn't we avoid from the sin of killing? When a clan becomes decadent, he continues, Arjuna, to say here, its ancient traditions, the laws, perish. When traditions perish, this is very important because, interestingly enough, pay attention, this already starts touching modern times. Think about our modern times, how today people sometimes take revel in ignoring ancient traditions and the old school type of doing things. And he says, listen to that, he says, when a clan, this could apply to a nation, to a village, to whatever, he says, when a clan becomes decadent, its ancient traditions and laws perish. When traditions perish, the entire clan is indeed overcome by lawlessness. In other words, the whole clan starts going the wrong way. O Krishna, when lawlessness prevails, the women of the clans becomes corrupt. He actually now considers that the role of the woman in the society is very important. And this is interesting that he mentions it here, because from a tantric perspective, the woman represents the Shakti power very much. That's why Tantra is the worship of the feminine. And it's as if he's saying the Shakti energy starts becoming corrupt if everything is going the wrong way in this, the lawlessness and the falling apart of families and all that he was mentioning. He continues and he says, when women are corrupted, mixture of classes prevails. In other words, he says that things start becoming promiscuous. That's what because he considered that promiscuousness, that means totally ignoring the purity of the individual, becoming very dirty, so to speak, is what follows from that point. And he continues, listen, promiscuity results only in hell to those destroyers of the clans. In other words, when the family structure and when the clan nation structure is becoming to disintegrate and be destroyed, this results in hell, he says. As also the members of the clan will fall apart for being without legitimate progeny to perform the spirits of their ancestors fall, deprived of the offerings of rice ball and water. Now, this is interesting because people say, whoa, how the heck did he get from the clan structure, nation structure collapsing to rice and water? What's the connection, right? Relax, let me explain. Remember, and this will go into more, this is a fascinating topic that we'll explore a little bit later in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is the subject of sacrifice. Because in the old traditions, which actually still applies today, we see it in India, in Tibet, in Thailand, in various countries in Asia, where many times there you see this in shops, you see this in various places, that people make offerings to the ancestors, the spirits of the ancestors. Like sometimes, if some of you have been in Asia, maybe Thailand, maybe India, you go into some shops or some business places, and usually they have a small altar in the back where they have photos of family members who passed away, and you see that they put incense and water and rice, and modern Westerners usually don't understand this type of habit or this kind of custom, and they wonder, what is this about? Are these people primitive? I mean, don't you know your forefathers passed away? What's the point of offering them rice and water? They can't eat or drink, they died already. But this is actually a custom which is more than just a custom. It has great knowledge behind it that most modern people are unaware of, and that's the knowledge of sacrifice. And he says here, this is where he mentions the sacrifice. It's like energy. When you give it, you don't actually expect the grandfather who passed away or whoever it was to eat the rice or drink the water, but it's the energy from the rice and water that you offer for them, because they, on the subtle plane, wherever they are after death in the astral, it's their point now to actually, they will benefit from your gift of energy for them, so they are sustained in those subtle levels. This is a big topic that we go into a lot more details and explain it really clearly in the teachings of the art of dying. Actually, it's a course that we offer in many countries. You can look it up if you want. So I'm coming back now to the text. Let's continue. So he says, I repeat, for the spirits of their ancestors will fall when all this promiscuity is happening, because when there's promiscuity, people stop making offerings to the forefathers. The sacrifices are gone. And then he says, deprived of all offerings of rice, water, and whatever, the spirits of the ancestors fall. And he considers that to be very important, because when the spirits of the forefathers fall, it has an impact on us. And this is something that most people in modern times don't understand, because we today think that when we do, I don't know, all kinds of rituals in different religions for the spirit of a person who died, many people think that when there's a wake or when there's a funeral, whatever, we do that in order to kind of all the family members to join in and support each other and so on. This is not a support group. Actually, in the old days, all those rituals that were done during those times when somebody passed away were done for the spirit of the person who died, to support them with energy in a certain way. I don't want to go into too many details here. It's enough that you understand. And here it says, once the system, the old knowledge is gone and people fall apart, that means that the system falls apart, the nation falls apart, the ancient laws falls apart. Then the spirits of the forefathers lose this support from the living. And as a result of that, the living don't get the support from the forefathers. And this is very powerful stuff. You'll see that this is a lot of implications. And I bet you many of you never even heard of this before. And you might think it sounds like some weird stuff, forefathers, rituals. What is that all about? If you feel that this is too weird for you, just take it as a kind of anthropological experience or some, philosophical discussion. It doesn't have to apply to you at all. But if you think that this makes sense to you on other levels, keep it in mind. Let's see how this develop more as we study the Bhagavad Gita further. Now, I'll move on. And he continues. This is not the finishing yet of these troubles. He says, more will come. Look, he says, by the misdeeds of these ruiners of the clans and promoters of promiscuity, the immemorial traditions of the communities and clans are uprooted. So he says again the same thing in different words. And he says, oh Krishna, we have heard that residence in hell awaits men. The religious traditions of those clans have been destroyed. So eventually this all leads to a hellish experience, he says. Alas, what great sin have we resolved to commit when we prepared ourselves to destroy our kinsmen out of greed for the pleasures of a kingdom, he says. So he describes here a sin. Basically, if we are about to kill family members and friends, we are going to be sinful, and it will be for what? Just for pleasures of the kingdom. And he says this is something which is unacceptable. Far better, he says, far better would it be for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, the enemy, with weapons in hand, kill me in battle, he says. This is Arjuna speaking, unarmed and unresisting. He says, I'll drop my weapons, kill me. Better this way than me committing this sin, because these sins lead to hell, as he explained earlier. So that's his statement. And Sanjaya, the one who is helping the king to understand, the blind king, what's going on, Sanjaya said, so saying, Arjuna, with his mind overwhelmed with sorrow, abandoned his bow and arrows, sat down on the chariot seat. So basically he gives up. And guess what? This is the end of chapter 1. I'll start chapter 2 because I don't want to take too long. This is usually about an hour how we do this thing, and I want to give some time to people to ask questions. I don't know if you'll have many questions when it comes to chapter 1, because this one was so much of an introduction there. So not too many questions probably. If you do have any questions about chapter 1, feel free to put them up right now. But I'll continue to chapter 2 already, so we can move on into some more of the teachings already. We're going to start getting insight there. So Sanjaya, the same assistant to the king, is saying, to him who was thus overcome with pity, who is that? Arjuna, right? And whose eyes were full of tears and bore a bewildered look, to Arjuna, Sri Krishna spoke as follows. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, finally hearing the words of Krishna, the great avatar, the great enlightened being, the one who is above and beyond. Krishna, he is considered to have been an avatar or avatara in Sanskrit. Take out of your mind anything to do with these movies, Avatar and all that. This is just an abusive name. The word avatar or avatara comes from Sanskrit, and it means a descent of a divine soul into human flesh. It means basically a reincarnation of a kind of a Messiah type of individual, like a Jesus or someone of that caliber, and Krishna was an avatara. And therefore Krishna here, who is like God speaking, so to speak, divinity speaking through him, and therefore Krishna here turns to Arjuna and talks to him as follows. He says, the blessed Lord said, O Arjuna, whence or where from has this loathsome stupidity come upon you in this crisis? That's tough words, aren't they? If this attitude is unworthy of a noble personage like yourself, it is a bar to heaven and cause of much disrepute. He says, basically, that's not for you. You are a warrior. You are a high-quality individual. Why do you speak in such an ignorant way? He tells him. He continues, Arjuna, yield not to unmanliness. It is unmanly, he says. It befits thee not. Abandoning this base faint-heartedness, rise up, O dreaded hero, he says. Leave this fear behind and rise up and fight, basically. He continues. Actually, it's Arjuna, sorry. Arjuna answers here. He says, Oh Krishna, how can I attack Bhishma, this grandfather, the immortal one, and Drona, who is actually, Drona was his own teacher of the arts of war that he revered very much, in battle with my arrows? How can I attack them, he says. They are indeed worthy of worship, he tells him. It is indeed better to live here in this world on a beggar's fare. He says, better live as a beggar than to prosper by killing these venerable teachers, he says. The enjoyment of pleasure and power obtained through the slaughter of these teachers and elders will surely be blood-stained. So he insists, Arjuna, that this is the wrong choice. He says, how can I kill these elders, these great spirits, these great teachers, and continue like this? This is bloodshed. He said, I cannot live like that. We do not know which of the two alternatives will be better. He says, I'm facing these two bad alternatives, to fight these people and kill people that I have so much respect for, or not to fight and they will kill me. He says, I don't know which to choose, right? The one that we should conquer them, or the other that they should conquer us. That's what he says. The men on the side of Dhritarashtra, the enemy, standing arrayed against us, are the very people after killing whom we should not care to live. He says, if I kill them, I don't want to live like this, because these are revered people that I consider so highly. My natural disposition is vitiated by the sense of pity. He says, my natural disposition, which is a warrior, I'm usually a warrior, now it is overwhelmed by a sense of pity. And my mind is in utter confusion regarding my duty. Lord, I beg thee, he says to Krishna, tell me with certainty what will lead to my good. I am thy disciple, he says. I'm your disciple, Krishna. Instruct me, Krishna, who have taken a refuge in thee. He says, I'm taken refuge in thee. And he continues, I do not find anything that can stop this grief which numbs my senses, neither the unchallenged lordship over the prosperous kingdom. He says, even thinking that I'll have great success after this war if I win, that doesn't help me much. Not even the overlordship of all the devas can do this. Even if I control, he would say, all the gods, that is not going to make me happy about this fight. So Sanjaya, again, the commentator here says, addressing Sri Krishna, the master of the senses, that's how he's called sometimes, Krishna, Arjuna, though valorous and valiant and vigilant, said, I will not fight, and sat silent. O king, to whom who was thus sitting grief-stricken between the two armies, who is of course Arjuna, Sri Krishna said, as if by way of ridicule. So now Krishna answers, the Lord, the blessed Lord Krishna says, you are mourning. He talks to Arjuna this way. He says, you are mourning for those who should not be mourned for. Yet you speak like a wise man. The truly wise never weep, either for the dead or for the living. This is already the first teaching that Krishna is giving us here. He says, the truly wise, and you'll see in a minute why, never weep, never cries, either for the dead or for the living. How many of us are crying either for people who died or for people who are still alive? Or even for ourselves, we keep crying a lot in this life, right? He says, never was a time when I did not exist, Krishna says. Sounds crazy. I mean, how can Krishna, what is he, an immortal person? But he's not. We know Krishna was born and he died. So how is that working? He says, nor you. So he says, even you, Arjuna, there was never a time that you didn't live or didn't exist, he says, nor these rulers of men. That means all the generals and all the warriors here. Nor shall all of us cease to be hereafter. He actually says as if every soul is always there. It never desists. He'll explain it, but let's continue. Even as the attainment of childhood, youth, and old age is to one of in this physical life, so is the change to another body at death for the embodied soul. Wise men are not deluded by this. In other words, he describes reincarnation. He says the soul is everlasting, and that means the fact that the souls enter a body in at childbirth, it actually enters before, and then we live our lives, and then we die and the soul moves on. This thing that the soul changes bodies should not confuse you. This is the simplicity of what he says here. Contact of the senses with their objects generates cold and heat, he says. Pleasure and pain. They come and go, being impermanent. This is beautiful because this is exactly the teachings of Buddha and the teachings of great masters. He says, it's your senses that contact with the environment and give you input and makes you feel cold, hot, grief, happiness, whatever, pleasure, pain, all these opposites are there. But these things are impermanent. They never last forever. And bear them, therefore, he says, with patience. O leader of men, he says, the enlightened one who is unperturbed alike in pleasure and pain. That means a person who is enlightened, tells him, who is very balanced in pleasure and pain, he says, whose these do not distress, he indeed is worthy of immortality. Now this is a great teaching because enlightenment brings a person to a level where the pleasure and pain, it's not that you don't feel the opposites, you feel them, but you are balanced, they do not confuse or disturb you. Now we get to the teachings already, and things are starting to get very deep. And here, as things are getting more deep, I'm going to stop here. This is verse 15 in chapter 2. I'm stopping here and we'll continue next time from this point, and you will see that now we're getting into more deeper and deeper teachings, and the explanation will be very interesting. You'll see I will touch some very fascinating points of spirituality and you can learn a lot from this and have a lot of implications in your daily life. So I'll stop here and let's see if we have any questions. I understand if there are maybe not so many questions at this point because the text was mostly until now very just touching the background knowledge, the background presentation. If you don't have any questions regarding what we talked so far, you can also ask questions generally about your spiritual practice or any other topics that you want to ask on spiritual things. And I'll see if I can answer in the next 10-15 minutes, and then we'll conclude for today. Until next time, when we go into part 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, again, no more background story. We'll jump right into the teachings in the next one. So let's see. I'll just check here my list. Do we have any more questions? Well, we have a couple today. If more questions come, I will be seeing them. But for now, I'll just touch upon a couple of them. Praveen from India. How to find enlightened masters is the question. And of course, this is a very, very important question. How to find enlightened masters? Actually, if I want to really kind of specify this question better, I would say how to recognize an enlightened master if you do find them. That's even more important, because just asking how to find enlightened masters, everybody's got their own opinion. Some people say you just go on Google and, search for a guru or something, and you'll just find there many. Or go on Facebook or ask friends, or go and research in India, or go and research in Tibet, or sometimes, or go and just straight up find the top of the top, maybe find the Dalai Lama or somebody, and then you found an enlightened master. But the question is, even if you do find somebody, how do you know if they are really enlightened? That is the real question here. And that's why it's a bit of a challenge. The reality is this. We live at a time which is more challenging on this planet, as I've said many times to many people in our courses. It is called Kali Yuga by many practitioners, even by the Tantric teachings and texts. It's called Kali Yuga. It is a time where spirituality is at its lowest. And because of that, number one, we need to understand there are actually not many enlightened masters at this time on this planet. Sorry to say, and I know some people might be disappointed to hear this, because many of us would like to think, oh, there are many enlightened masters today, but actually there are not many. How many exactly, I cannot say. Maybe we're talking 100, maybe we're talking less than that. In a population of close to 7 billion, that's not many. And then how to find those who are truly enlightened? This requires more than anything good karma. Spiritual karma needs to be good. If the spiritual karma of an individual is not good because of previous life actions, whichever were done negative actions, then that will lead to the point where you will simply find it challenging to try and manage, not just to try, but even to manage, to find anyone who is truly spiritually enlightened. You might find various people who claim to be enlightened. You might find various people who have reached certain spiritual success, but it doesn't mean that you will find an actually, authentically enlightened spiritual teacher. So good karma is necessary. How to obtain good spiritual karma? You need to do spiritual practice. And to do spiritual practice, this is where things are challenging. You need to find a spiritual master. And this is like a closed loop. So how can we find one? The best way is to really go into your heart, meditate as best as you can, pray. And prayer is a great tool when you know how to pray properly. By the way, I do plan to offer soon, and this will stay tuned to that one, a full workshop on the art of prayer. And this is a very, very big teaching that I haven't had a chance to teach until now, but it is coming soon, the art of prayer. And I'm going to put it on our team is going to put it on our website pretty soon. And you'll see that by praying truly from the heart, you can surpass a lot of the difficult karma. And when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And that's why how to find the enlightened masters, you need to really come from the heart and pray the right way. And then you will find that the teacher will arrive. Nella from Sweden is asking, was the author of the Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, an enlightened being? The answer is yes. He's considered to be one of the great rishis of the old time, who actually brought forth and taught and actually wrote the Bhagavad Gita. And did he channel the book? Was it legends or true events that he wrote down? It is claimed that these are true events, an actual real event that took place somewhere before Kali Yuga started, before this modern age of mankind. That means more than 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. Some people even claim more than 12,000 years ago, where the Bhagavad Gita events took place. So yes, he was actually quoting real events. Yana from Slovenia is asking, what did Krishna teach Arjuna before this first chapter? Was Arjuna doing yoga? Krishna was teaching Arjuna a lot of things, but it's not so much clear what they were in the Mahabharata, depending on which translation you're reading. But he did teach him a lot about, for example, the word I'm looking for is rituals, sacrifices, and different teachings to do with how to lead the proper life. But it's not mentioned specific yogic techniques. In fact, the real specific yogic techniques that Krishna is teaching Arjuna are brought forth here in the Bhagavad Gita. So stay tuned, because more yoga actually will come in this text as we move forwards with this. And Zara is asking here another question. It's my experience that reading the Bhagavad Gita and extracting spiritual knowledge from it, what I learned changes every time I read it. Is it related to my own spiritual evolution, or it's the nature of the spiritual text? It is both. It is the nature of the spiritual text. When we have a true spiritual text, many times we will find that as you study it again and again, the text is so rich because it's very spiritual that somehow it triggers new revelations for you, new openings. And this also depends on your own karma and your own evolution. For example, a person who meditated for 10 years reading the Bhagavad Gita after 10 years or after 5 years will discover that the Bhagavad Gita brings new depth to them. So it's both ends of this that bring us to the answer. Both your position in your spiritual evolution at this time, and both that the text itself being so spiritual that it will provoke new revelations every time. So this is our teachings for today. Stay tuned for next time, part 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. Remember, from the next part of the Bhagavad Gita, we're really jumping into the meat of it, to the real teachings, which is chapter 2 and going deeper. No more presentations of warriors' names or different background information. We've gone through all that. Now you know where we stand. Time to go deeper. And that's chapter 2, verse 16 will be next. And that's part 2 of our presentation in our next live event. Stay tuned for that. I want to thank you all very much and see you next time. Blessings and all the best. Thank you.